We're so excited to be able to share this with you guys. The book that we have been working on here over at Sharp Football Analysis, that a lot of the guys that are on this call, everybody that's on this call, has contributed to in a significant way. We work on this thing for months and months, all summer basically, started in March, and work until, here we are, early July. The 4th of July just happened, and we've got the book ready earlier than usual. And I'm so excited to be able to bring it to you guys. This book is the 2023 football preview, and we have a lot of unique perspectives on these teams in this book. We have a lot of unique takes as to what we believe is going to happen in the 2023 NFL season. And this book has been responsible for a lot of people making some good money this year. We really try to come out with strong takes on different teams, takes that not everybody else has, because we've been grinding and we've been uncovering certain things. And so last year's book ended up producing a lot of profit from a team perspective on the futures market, from an early season perspective, whether you're betting these games, weeks 1, 2, 3, etc., as well as on a player perspective for fantasy football and for some early season DFS. That is our goal, is to try to help bring actionable opinions that are going to also be highly successful and highly predictive for success. So with that said, I do want to bring up and introduce all these guys here. It's just a whirlwind of activity and work. Yesterday was a busy day as well, trying to get this book ready for you all. First, I want to go ahead and talk to Ray, who is the man responsible for editing every single word. And the book itself is 532 pages. 532 pages, like 14 to 18 pages on every single team. And Ray, this was your first year of editing the book. What did you make of the depth of information, and how insane, unfortunately, did I drive you during this, during the last 2-3 months here?
I think I went through and tried to do some napkin math, and I think it was over 200,000 words. So there's a lot in there, but what you mentioned, the depth of it is really what's impressive. Even before I joined with y'all, I've read your preview book, I believe, every year. Some years you were gracious enough to send it to me for free, and so I always did appreciate that. And so I have had a great with the preview book, and then being able to get through and read all of it, see all of your opinions, that's been, great. So I've been really excited to just be a part of this book, to be able to read it first, to be able to see all of your insights, to maybe place some bets. It's been great.
Yeah, no, it's been great having you on board. It's been great. Ray is this is his first year with us. He's excellent as it relates to his fantasy insights, but he's a really sharp and strong editor as well. And so we've been really fortunate to have him join forces. I think one of the things that I talk about in this book, and by the way, is we're going to be launching this thing at noon. So just so you guys know, if you bought this book, you will be able to access it at noon Eastern today. Okay, so that's in 23 minutes. We're counting down 23 minutes. You're going to be able to get this book. And we want to tell you right off the top of this as well that we have multiple giveaways to provide you with, and we're going to be doing giveaways all throughout the summer as well. But this hour, we're going to be with you guys until 12:30. We're going to be taking your calls, your questions, hearing some of your thoughts and insight for all the team here. But we are going to be doing a few giveaways. We're going to give away a couple of printed books. So you might ask, the first thing I just want to clear up is, why are we not selling printed books right now? Why can you only get a printed book if you win a giveaway? And the answer is pretty simple. I used to sell this book on Amazon, and I used to sell the book on Amazon for $30, $35, and I would make 5 cents a book, 5 to 10 cents a book. because the book was only 250 pages at that time, and Amazon sets a minimum price point that you have to sell a book for, and anything more than that, you start to make a rev share, like a percentage, so a few cents per copy. And that's the way that this book used to go for me. And look, now the book is 532 pages. Okay, the Amazon's going to make me, the minimum price is over $70, and I would still only be making a few cents if I sold it for just over $70. We're not doing that to you guys. We're trying to make this book. We're giving to you in your hands PDF right now, today at noon, for $29. And so that's our goal. But we are going to reward people that have bought the PDF by giving you guys several free copies of the printed book for people who bought the PDF. So step one is to buy the PDF, and step two is going to be to quote tweet my sticky tweet. Do not do that yet, though. The sticky tweet that's going to be live at noon when I announce that the book is ready, that's the one that you want to be quote tweeting. I'll tell you when that happens. You quote tweet that, and you'll be entered, and we're going to give away a couple of printed books today on this call between 12 and 12:30. So I do want to run through some predictions, though. Obviously, like, this is a big day for us. We're launching this book, and we want to celebrate that fact, but we want to talk to all the writers about some of their predictions and some of their thoughts on the upcoming season. So let's go ahead and get into that right now. And I'll bring up Curtis. Curtis wrote all of our, reasons to bet a team over or under. And I think it's important to realize that you have to have an open mind, open perspective as you are evaluating these teams. If you come in too biased, you're going to really harm your entire offseason research process. So the more that you think that you know a team, the worse off you are. And the reason is because while you might know this team pretty well, the market already basically understands that baseline expectation. And we are not looking to just form opinions that Patrick Mahomes is elite and the Kansas City Chiefs are a good team, right? That's not what our goal is with writing this book. Our goal is to say, will the Chiefs exceed their expectations? Will the team exceed their expectations? Will Mahomes exceed his expectations? Will the fantasy players on the Chiefs exceed their expectations based upon how the market is pricing out these guys, whether it's Rich and his fantasy rankings and where he's slated guys to be drafted, whether it's Curtis in the futures market, or whether that's like the MVP odds, whether it's the team level. We have to we know what the market is expecting of these guys. Should we be more bullish or bearish on the Kansas City Chiefs this year? And that's why you have to really approach this from a very open perspective. So the first question I want to ask you, Curtis, as you've evaluated this is, what team did you change your opinion on the most from maybe what it was like in February and March after the Super Bowl to right now, today, based upon your research that you put into writing this book?
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Yeah, so going into this book, I kind of look at the wide range of outcomes for the teams because most teams actually don't finish quite near their actual win total. So I try to look at best case scenario, worst case scenario. How do they get there? And what could we see that happened to get there? And the team that I changed my mind the most on is probably the Atlanta Falcons. I wasn't very high on them last year, so it's probably a continuation from last year to this year. I think that Art Smith, we can make fun of him for never passing the ball, but his offense was uber efficient last year. And I think adding Bijan Robinson to that run game will make it even more efficient. And then you look, they added some really nice pieces on the defense. So I think they can shore up some holes there. And then their schedule. If you go look at that schedule, I don't know if there's a game that they're guaranteed to lose in. Like for the Atlanta Falcons, they could realistically reel off 5, 6, 7 wins in a row multiple times in the season. So that's the team I changed my mind the most on, just with their roster construction. I think they got some more cap space, getting all that dead money off. And I think they built it quite nicely, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, this was absolutely one of the teams for me. I spent a lot of time writing about this team and doing some research. This was one of those that if you got on board with our futures several weeks ago, we put a lot of futures out there related to the Atlanta Falcons. So I encourage you, our futures package last year, I think went like 17-5, 17-6, something along those lines. It was really strong. It's been strong for the past 5 years, always finding value there. This is one of those teams. So if you're not on board with that, I do encourage you get on board for our futures. But we unfortunately already moved the market for you guys as it relates to betting the Atlanta Falcons. When I released this and when we bet this, the market obviously moved because we do have influence on that. And there's a lot of you guys that are subscribers to our betting packages, and you guys helped move the markets as well. The Atlanta Falcons were in 15 of their 17 games last year. By that, I mean they either won those games or they lost it within one score. So on one possession, they could have ended up tying or winning the game. Only 2 other teams were, quote unquote, in more games than the Atlanta Falcons. That were the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So in the Atlanta Falcons were a team that was always hanging around last year. They had $84 million tied up in dead cap. $84 million. Absolutely absurd when they spent only $203 million on the cap and $84 million of that was tied up in dead cap. So they couldn't spend it on players that were actually playing on their team in 2022. They cleared that all the way down to $11 million this year. They spent a lot on defensive players. We know that the NFC is a little bit weaker. There's some good things that are going to happen with the Atlanta Falcons this year, in my opinion. Now, do I sometimes get frustrated at the frequency with which Art Smith runs the football on first down? Yes. However, that rushing is actually efficient. If you look at the fact that they get loaded boxes and they're still able to be productive against those boxes, that's what makes me feel like, okay, this team can still stay on track. And then you've got the play action passing game, which they average more yards per attempt than any other team on first down passing the football because they don't throw it often, but when they do, they use a lot of play action and throw it deeper down the field and have some success there. I expect all these receivers and tight ends to step up a little bit more as they're a very youthful group and they're going to improve. And in addition, I just think that the coaching is going to continue to get better. At the end of the day, though, Curtis, I think you'll agree, this ends up coming down to whether or not Desmond Ridder can take that next step. We're going to need him to take that next step, but they certainly are in a very good position to do that. I want to move on to Ray. What is a team, same question for you, Ray, as we've got 14 minutes until the book release here. What's a team that you changed your opinion on the most this summer through research?
I think it was the Packers, which is, was a little bit odd because I kind of went into it, we don't know what Jordan Love's going to be. You look at that division and the Lions are certainly the it team of the offseason. The Vikings, we know that they're not going to be able to do what they did last year, but they're probably still a good team. The Bears have gotten probably better than they were last year. And so I think the Packers have been lost a bit in the mix, especially with Aaron Rodgers leaving and everybody just kind of, taking them maybe a little bit for granted. But if you look at their roster outside of Love, their roster is still very good. You could argue their roster is the best in that division because the Lions, even though, we're really excited about how they ended their season, we love their coaching staff, the Lions still have issues. They still have issues on defense. They helped the secondary. They brought in a lot of pieces in the secondary. We still don't know how good it can be. The rest of the defense still has issues. So I think the Packers are being overlooked a little bit. I think if I was betting, there were no odds involved, I would probably still take the Lions to win this division. But there is at least a reasonable chance Jordan Love comes in and is fine. And if that is the case, then this Packers team is being undervalued by me before I started really looking into it, and I think by the public at large.
Yeah, the Packers, that division, that entire NFC North is an interesting division this year because no doubt about it, the Minnesota Vikings way overshot last season, way overperformed. I wrote in the book about how they didn't deserve to have, 13 wins that they did last year. And I know I also echoed the same sentiments on Twitter, and people are like, well, they obviously won that number of games, so they must have deserved to do that. And I said, I'm glad people like you bet in the betting market and have some influence a little bit if there's enough of you people, because that's absolutely not the way it works. It's not the Bill Parcells-ism, you are what your record says you are. That's how we get value in the betting market, by people believing things like that. So I do agree with you. The NFC North is going to be a really interesting team because the Vikings are not a powerhouse like they seem to exhibit with the record last season. A lot of people are looking to get on the Chicago Bears this offseason. I'm not quite as bullish on them, I think, but it's going to be an interesting division. So let's pivot over and we'll talk to Rich. Rich, why don't you share with us a team that you are higher on more than the market right now?
Hey guys, what's going on? I think a team that I'm higher on more than the market, and I live outside of Cleveland, and I'm actually not a Browns fan, so I'm not even the homer take. But I think the Cleveland Browns. Once again, when we did the unit rankings, the Browns are another team. Like, their roster just comes out a lot better than you think it is in all facets. They were in the top half for me in every single category as a roster. Then you look at kind of last year, they kind of had everything go wrong, and the high variance plays went wrong. I mean, they lose a game on basically an onside kick recovery against the Jets. They have a missed field goal against the Chargers. That prevented them from eventually being a 7-win team to a 9-win team, and a team in a season that everything was a disaster. They had just 2 offensive linemen appear in all 17 games, literally the strength of the team. They had a quarterback not play football for the last year and a half and then kind of come back and try to hit the ground running. And then their wide receiver play was just abysmal outside of Amari Cooper. All of those areas you expect to be improved. Obviously, a lot falls on Deshaun Watson, what we can expect from Deshaun Watson after he was a disaster the final 6 games last year. But you kind of have to go back to Dante Culpepper to find a quarterback that was as good as Deshaun Watson was over the first 5 years of his career, and then just was never good again. And even Dante Culpepper was a guy who had a severe knee injury, was older than what Watson is now. He's only going to be 28 when the season starts. And then Randy Moss retired too at that same point. So we got to kind of give Deshaun Watson's talent the benefit of the doubt. We don't have to root for him on a humanitarian level by any means, but I would expect him to be a lot better than the football player we saw in the final 6 games of last season. And then when you look at kind of under Kevin Stefanski, there's been some small signal, like this team is slowly getting more aggressive. They used 11 personnel on 71% of their passing plays last season. That only was 20th, but it went up to 76.8% with Watson on the field compared to Jacoby Brissett. And they got one of the most anemic performances out of their wide receiver 3 across the league last season in David Bell, who was literally one of the least targeted wide receivers on the field, just out there getting exercise. Replacing him with Elijah Moore, potentially a Marquise Goodwin, is just going to improve things, and what that does for a guy like Nick Chubb later. And then adding Zadarius Smith across from the best pass rusher in the NFL, Myles Garrett, just a huge boon. Getting rid of Joe Woods, and that scheme that we've seen that just gives up rushing production. You see Brandon Staley running a similar scheme in the Chargers out there in Los Angeles. And then, adding Dalvin Tomlinson. This team's going to be better against the run. So I look at the Browns. They're in a tough division, but I actually think that this is still one of the more talented rosters. And it's probably some underhype based on where they're probably overhyped coming into last year.
Yeah, no, look, the Browns last year at this point in time did not have a season win over and under set on them. I mean, we did not know how many games. I think it was about this time. We did not know how long Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for. And this is a team who went 2-6 last year. This is a team in 1-score games. This is a team that their offense played the number 1 most difficult schedule of opposing defenses. That lightens up a lot this upcoming season. And a lot of the other points that you mentioned, I echo completely. I think that the Cleveland Browns, this division, the problem is that this entire division is just brutal, from top to bottom. Whether or not you think that the Steelers are a contender, I think that the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals are 2 of the more elite teams in the NFL with game-changing quarterbacks. And then if Watson can get anywhere close to, even if it's 80% of what he was down in Houston, where he really carried that team entirely on his shoulders, you would expect a little rust last season. You could say some weather, some difficult opponents, just the lack of maybe there's a lot of other factors that were going on there. And I get that a lot of people didn't really were just pretty satisfied with watching him struggle last season. I think this year there's going to be some definite changes there. And hopefully Stefanski gets back to doing some of the things that he did when he won Coach of the Year and plays a lot better. Let's go over to you, Curtis. Again, what is a team for you personally that you're lower on more than the market? You talked about the Atlanta Falcons. You like the Atlanta Falcons last season, this upcoming season. What is a team that you feel oppositely on and that you're a little bit lower on?
Yeah, I'll go with the Tennessee Titans. Going through their roster and looking at some of the position groups there, I started to become pretty low on them, especially kind of taking a look at how the organization acted throughout the offseason as well. They traded up to get a quarterback. They did not cut Tannehill. His dead cap in the offseason is quite low coming up. And their start of the season, if they lose week 1 to the Saints, they've got the Bengals, Chargers, and Ravens in 3 of the next 4 weeks. And then they have an early bye. I really don't know what the organization does if they start 1-5. They could go to Will Levis. I see that happening. And then you've got Derrick Henry as well, who could possibly be traded. Why keep him around? He's aging. He's on his last year of his contract. And the whole team has a weird makeup. They're a run-first team with a terrible offensive line. And then they are very good on run defense, but their corners stink. So they became a huge pass funnel last year. So I just don't know how they can continue to win just based on coaching. I think they're going to have a tough time on offense. They don't have a lot of receiving depth. Their offensive line is going to show that their immobile quarterbacks are going to get sacked a bit more. And I just think they might struggle out of the gate. And then I think they might just pivot to thinking about the future. And I think you're going to see Will Levis in there early. And I think you might see Tajay Spears taking over the back field as well earlier than expected.
So if you guys read in the book, the Tennessee Titans chapter, I think you're going to be very surprised based upon what you heard Curtis say, because I have some interesting opinions and thoughts on the Tennessee Titans and ways that I really believe this team could turn themselves around quite quickly and improve. The problem is twofold. Number one, the talent specifically along the offensive line. I have major concerns there, as well as the wide receiver core. The wide receiver core is not noticeably garbage compared to last year. It still was relatively garbage last season as well. And they were able to be competitive in a lot of their games last season. So I don't necessarily, I've got a very contrarian opinion about what this team could do offensively. But I think my biggest hang up is that offensive line, whether or not, I know they have a new offensive coordinator, but does he actually try to do the things that we know are wise and intelligent to do? Or does he continue on with doing the same boneheaded things in terms of running into heavy boxes repeatedly on first down, unlike the Atlanta Falcons, quite unsuccessfully, and then setting up this team with second and pass and third and pass, like obvious passing situations? Or are there improvements there? And was this a Mike Vrabel thing that we were seeing a lot more running on first down that wasn't accomplishing anything? Or could that have just been the offensive coordinator and now the change is going to help things? But the schedule as well, you do note that, Curtis, and I think that's a big point to mention. The schedule was absolutely brutal over those first 6 weeks, and a lot is to be determined as to how they come out of those first 6 weeks. If they can somehow win 2 of the 6 games, or maybe even 3, I think this team could surprise some people down the stretch this upcoming season. If this team goes, like you projected, 1-5 potentially, or something like that, then we're looking at, what is in their best interest to do for the rest of the season, and how much will Mike Vrabel, who gets his team more prepared than most any other coach out there, how will he try to navigate down the stretch if they are okay with losing some of their games? I want to talk to you guys. We are going to be dropping the book here in a matter of seconds over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. It's about to hit 12 p.m. Eastern time. That is the time that the book is going to go live. You will see a tweet from me as soon as that book goes live. I encourage you to like that tweet, quote tweet that tweet. That's going to help enter you into a drawing for a printed copy, 532 pages of the 2023 football preview, where we preview every single team in depth. But that is dropping quite soon. We are going to take a lot of your questions immediately after the book goes live. we are taking questions about the season from you, and we're going to stay on here for at least another 30 minutes going over some of these things with you and just kind of chatting. And boom, there it is. The book is now live. It is up on sharpfootballanalysis.com. If you purchase the book, you can go log into your dashboard and you will see a copy of the book sitting there in your dashboard. I will also be threading in the way that you can access the book. If you aren't familiar with what the dashboard is, there's a button in the top right-hand page of the website. It encourages you to log in. Once you do log in, it'll take you directly to the dashboard. If you were already logged in, you can click up on the top right-hand corner of the word dashboard. You'll be redirected back to the dashboard, and right there underneath your name where it says hello or welcome will be a link in red for you to access the PDF. It's going to be sitting right there. It is still early bird pricing, just so you guys know. If you haven't joined the party, so to speak, if you're unsure as to whether or not you want to buy this book, I can assure you this is going to be the fastest way for you to get prepared for the 2023 NFL season. You will not find a faster resource that's more comprehensive, that covers every aspect, whether it's fantasy football, betting, whether it's futures market, anything and everything. Early bird pricing, though, ends Friday. So go to Sharp Football Analysis, pick up your copy right there on the purchase page or the blue bar at the top of the page. Get access to it. Early bird pricing ends in 2 days. I promise you, if you're utterly dissatisfied with this book, if you think this is a complete waste of your time, effort, energy, money, let me know directly and we'll refund you. You're not going to. I've offered this multiple times for years. Anybody is so upset with this book and thinks it's terrible, let me know why. And nobody ever does. It is the best way to spend your money to get ready for the season, to pick up this book. Before we get into answering some of your questions, I do want to ask a couple of guys a few more questions about their contributions to this book, but I do want you guys to be aware that we are going to do a giveaway of the printed copy. We're going to tweet some videos out. We're going to go live tomorrow night. I want to say 8 or 9 p.m. on video. We're going to be chatting with you guys. I'll show you what my printed book looks like. I got a test printed book from Amazon to look at it, and it is absolutely gorgeous. We're going to be giving away a couple of these books. How do you get this printed book? Purchase the PDF and quote tweet my pinned tweet. You go quote tweet that. After you purchase the book, you are eligible to get a copy. We're going to give away 2 copies of the printed book by the end of the day today. And we're going to give away more later to people that bought the PDF. So make sure that you go pick up your copy. Let's get back into talking about the 2023 NFL season and some of our previews for what we are expecting to happen here this year. And I want to go over to Rich, our fantasy guru, and I want to ask you, Rich, talk to me a little bit about a specific player that you think is going to potentially surprise some people this year that you're a little bit higher on more now that you've researched and wrote up things for the book than maybe you were a couple of months ago.
Well, I think it piggybacks off of my earlier kind of response to the Browns, and it's kind of Nick Chubb. He's a guy that has done nothing but climb kind of all season because, you know, the Browns haven't signed an RB2, and that's kind of why. But outside of his kind of projected usage being high, I think the situation overall is just lined up for Nick Chubb to be one of the most efficient runners. He's already been one of the most efficient runners literally in NFL history. He's averaged 5 yards per carry all 5 seasons in the league. He's the only player in history to do that on 100 more carries in each of their first 5 years. That's in the history of football, even back when they were handing off every play when Jim Brown was doing it. But even if you aren't buying a Deshaun Watson rebound from him kind of bouncing back from an efficiency stance as he was early in the career, what he does structurally for Nick Chubb is absolutely going to open up kind of, like I said, one of the guys that was so efficient on running into heavy boxes because getting those 3 wide receiver sets on the field are going just to do nothing but create lanes for him. He had more carries last season with an 11 personnel than he had his previous 2 seasons prior The first 2 years with Kevin Stefanski. His light box rate was the lowest rate of his career. Simultaneously, his heavy box rate was the lowest of his career. So you're giving the league's best kind of rusher. If you ask anyone, who's the best runner in the NFL, they always answer you Nick Chubb. Well, now you're going to have Nick Chubb not running against 8-man boxes like he has, historically in his career. So if they get anything out of like Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Marquise Goodwin, like it's only going to make Nick Chubb even better. So Nick Chubb kind of being one of those guys that we kind of looked like in the past, like, he's a little overvalued, he doesn't catch a lot of passes, he's going to be more touchdown dependent. But with the opportunity opening up and then schematically what the Browns are going to do offensively and how that opens up for Nick Chubb, he's been a guy that I've just been extremely higher on than the market, basically this entire offseason.
Now, I know Rich is from Ohio and he keeps talking about the Browns, but I assure you he is a completely objective and unbiased fantasy analyst, one of the best in the business. So don't let the fact that he keeps talking about the Browns throw you off the scent that there is a good reason for why you would be wanting to be high on Nick Chubb. In addition to everything that Rich said, it relates back to his first point, which was that if the Browns are going to be better than they were last season, then this team's going to win more games. And when they win more games than 7 games, that's going to provide more opportunities for Nick Chubb to get touches and carries on the ground in the second half, in the third and fourth quarters of games. I'm going to go to Ray with the same exact question. Ray, you spent months now researching for the book, writing up your findings inside the pages of the book. What is a player that you're a little bit higher on now than you were 3 months ago before you started researching the book?
Well, I like Rich coming in hot with that Nick Chubb is good take. That was good. I'm going to go a little bit further down the list, and I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson, another running back, who I went into this not really thinking I would want any part of the Washington offense. We'll see what happens with Sam Howell. I actually think in the short term, from a fantasy perspective, it might be better if Jacoby Brissett starts for that, wide receiver trio, and a duo. I don't really know what we have in Curtis Samuel. But looking at Antonio Gibson and his usage last year after J.D. McKissic was lost for the season to injury, his routes jumped up from around 14 when McKissic was healthy to 18 without McKissic. We did not see the same jump in his targets. I think that that's probably a fluke. Antonio Gibson's been targeted at around 23% of his routes throughout his career. He's going to be the clear passing game back. And then last year, even when Brian Robinson was getting most of the carries, and he was getting a lot of touches whenever he was healthy, we still saw the goal line work split relatively evenly between those two. And so I don't think Brian Robinson has much of an advantage over Gibson. I believe Gibson is the better fantasy play in PPR, half PPR, and I think there's even an argument that he's the better play in standard. Even when Robinson was averaging around 19 touches a game, Gibson was outscoring him. So I think that Gibson is the better fantasy play, and I think he's a bit undervalued as well.
Okay, so Gibson is a guy that you really like this season. Curtis, let me go to you with a similar type of question. Give me a player that, I guess I'll let you choose. Who are you higher on or lower on? Now, Curtis, as I mentioned, in the book, we very unbiasedly, very objectively write up every single team. In addition, I asked Curtis, give me the most, I guess, under the radar or compelling reasons why you think a certain team will go over or under their win total. And he has to play devil's advocate. He might like a certain team over their win total, but he has to come up with poke holes. What are the best reasons why this team might not go the way that I'm expecting? This is a very good exercise for anybody who's betting on the NFL to do every single week before they actually place a bet. You have to not just get so enthralled and taken away by why you like a bet. You also have to think of the counterpoints just to make sure that the bet that you have, there's more things that outweigh, the good outweighs the bad. And I asked Curtis to do this for every single team. But Curtis has a big fantasy background. He writes for Sharp Football Analysis and does waiver wire for us every week. He plays in the high stakes tournaments as well. So Curtis, let me ask you this question. Although you didn't write about players, you researched every single one of these teams, and I forced you to do it in a very objective manner. Who is a player that you are either much higher on or much lower on than you were when you started writing the book 3 months ago?
Yeah, this is a very objective manner because I'm going to go with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, the combination of both of them. And as a Cowboy fan, it hurts me to say that, and I do think A.J. Brown is probably a better wide receiver than CeeDee Lamb. And digging into their numbers, a lot has been written about how Jalen Hurts didn't have to throw in the second half. They were absolutely dominating first halves of every game. And I think he's going to have a better season this year, fantasy football-wise, than last year, basically because he's going to be forced to throw a little bit more. The schedule is more difficult, and he could lead the league in touchdowns. They're unstoppable on his sneak, and the league didn't touch that. So I think he could absolutely smash. And then A.J. Brown. When I was digging through some things, in the first 8 weeks of the season, A.J. Brown, when Brown, Goddard, and Smith were all on the field, Brown was targeted 27% of the routes compared to Smith's 19%. I believe that we know A.J. Brown had some knee issues in the past. He's had multiple cleanup surgeries. When Brown is healthy, he is a beast. He's unstoppable. In the first 8 weeks, he had a 3.06 yards per route run to Devonta Smith's 1.58. That equaled out later on in the season when Goddard was out, and I believe Brown was playing through a bit of an injury as well. So A.J. Brown is that guy who could surprise, and he is so good after the catch that I'm going to go with A.J. Brown.
Yeah, I definitely... The Eagles chapter is one of the lengthier chapters in the book. In the past, just so you guys know, as I was writing this book with my sections, I force... And I don't think they love this, but I force the other guys to kind of fit their material into certain boxes on different pages. And then I can write as much or as little as I want to on these teams. And in the past, I tried to also force myself to write an equal amount on every single team. And I decided to write what I wanted to on every team. That's why some chapters are a little bit longer than others. The Eagles is a little bit longer. And it's just remarkable how infrequently this team was really tested late in games. They ended up playing in a few more one-score games than you might otherwise expect with the record as strong as theirs, just because they took their foot off the gas a little bit more. It's such a unique team, Curtis, because they're very different than, let's say, the Kansas City Chiefs. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs, they're a high pass rate team, and they continue passing the ball late into the second half, even when they are winning games. The Philadelphia Eagles, people are going to be surprised. They're a high pass rate team as well in the first half of games. It's just that once they got those leads and once they felt comfortable, they just started running the ball a ton and just took it out of Jalen Hurts' hands. The problem there is that he does not therefore have a lot of experience late in games in close clutch situations, having to be forced to pass the ball, to convert and to have success. And thus, Mahomes is giving more opportunities to practice in game states than Jalen Hurts was. And I would like to see Jalen Hurts get a few more of those opportunities this upcoming season. But guess what? If what you think is true and this team is not nearly as dominant and their schedule's more difficult, then they are going to be needing to pass the ball more into the second half of games, which will absolutely help from a fantasy perspective for each of those guys. Let's talk a little bit more now about favorite futures or player props. We're going to sort of turn the page a little bit, and then we're going to take some of your guys' questions. So I'm going to ask each of these guys what one of their favorite player futures or player props are, or team futures as well. Then we're going to ask you guys, we're opening the mic to get a few questions from you. I just want to rehash. The book just launched. The book is on early bird special. I can just say this. I am going to the beach, okay? I am getting out of here. I am finally going outdoors. You haven't seen me post many videos or pictures or anything about my life because I've been locked into this damn room working on this book for months. I am getting ready now to go spend the rest of the summer relaxing and enjoying the beach. Now, I get the benefit of doing that because I can still bet while I'm there and I can still operate my business while I'm there. But I worked my ass off to get this book ready, and this is the biggest thing that helps me get ready for everything. So get the book. It's going to help you guys get ready for the season. It's on early bird discount only through Friday up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. The book is going to leave early bird on Friday night, so get it now. And when you buy the book, it's a PDF, okay? I encourage you, quote tweet my pinned tweet, and you will be entered in a drawing where we're going to give away multiple copies of the printed book. They're going to be shipped to you via Amazon. It cost me an arm and a leg to do this, but I want to give you guys something for picking up the PDF. I know some of you wish you could have a printed copy. I see everybody each year, people are going to their Kinkos and printing copies out themselves just to have a printed copy, and I totally respect the hustle. I think that's great. However you best consume things. I have some people, I offer to send them a printed, they want a contest, you want a printed book. They say I actually prefer reading it on my iPad and reviewing it on my computer. I'm more of an electronic person. Okay, fine, good, good for you. But we will have some printed copies that we'll give away if you bought the PDF. So with that said, I'm going to go to you, Rich. What is, at this moment, a favorite prop, team future, player prop, anything like that? What do you like in the betting marketplace right now?
Right now, yeah, there's a few out there, and not a huge fan of the season-long overs, but there's a couple wide receiver ones out there I think are just far too low, and it's because they're priced in for quarterback uncertainty. Christian Watson, his receiving yardage at 750.5, I think is just way off. It's just totally off my projected number. You look at last year from week 10 on, he averaged 64 receiving yards per game. His total right now basically is implying 44 yards per game. He actually hit those 44 yards per game in every single full game he played from week 10 on. I think that just the Jordan Love uncertainty is priced in. He was targeted on 26% of his routes from week 10 on, which was 12th in the NFL. So even with my Packers, if they remain low value, just the kind of big play receiver he is, I just think that number is way too off. And then Terry McLaurin at 900.5, I actually bet it. It was 875.5 when it opened, but he's absolutely smoked this line every year of his career already with the worst quarterback play that he's already had. So is Sam Howell going to dramatically be worse than what we got out of Taylor Heineke last year, out of Carson Wentz who started last year? It's hard for me to believe that. So those two numbers I just think are significantly off, and they're off my projections. And I think it's just because of the uncertainty at quarterback play, which you can take advantage of that uncertainty, because I think both lines are just tremendously too low.
Yeah, what does Warren Buffett say? When people are scared, that's when you should be aggressive. And absolutely, there's going to be a floor. Now, frankly, I don't know how, and I write about this a lot in the Washington Commanders chapter. Some fans are going to be probably happy that I said this, and others might be disappointed. I'm not sure, but I don't understand how Ron Rivera kept his job. This guy has not been, it's been 3 years now, and he has not been able to produce a winning record, nor has he figured out and found the quarterback of the future. And don't tell me that Sam Howell is the mastermind plan, a guy that they drafted down the board. This is a guy that they're being forced to start because their other options just were so disastrous, every single move that they have made. So I was not a fan of the Washington Commanders keeping Rivera. I 100% believe it had a lot to do with the fact that their ownership was changing and just in a very fluid state. And so they had nothing more to do than just keep him on board to at least maintain some form of consistency, because who's actually going to hire this guy, and what direction does the future ownership want to go in? But absolutely, this team now has Eric Bieniemy. Whether or not he's able to pass the football as much as he was doing in Kansas City remains to be seen. Certainly when you're given a quarterback who is Sam Howell and is not Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to have the same pass rate that you had in Kansas City. But the Washington Commanders pass rate last year was a joke, was a disaster, especially with how, let's say, unproductive the run game was. And McLaurin, as you mentioned, Rich, has been just millstones around his neck with various different terrible quarterbacks and schemes, and he's still been able to go over this number. So barring injury, certainly that's one that I definitely agreed with you on. Ray, I'm going to go to you with the exact same question. A favorite future or player prop for this upcoming season?
I really like Trevor Lawrence over 3,975.5 passing yards. And as Rick said correctly, taking overs feels dirty at this point in the year. There's so much bad that could happen. You know, you're dealing with injuries, but I'm just confused by that number, because that number, if you look at what Trevor Lawrence did over the back half of the season, when that Jaguars offense finally turned around and really started to click, he averaged 246.9 passing yards per game over the final 11 games. If you take that over a 17-game season, you're going over this total by several hundred yards. So even if there's a small step back from that, then if he stays healthy, he's going to go over this number. I'm pretty confident. They also added in Calvin Ridley. Their defense still is not very good. Their division is easy. I think the only way this doesn't hit is if Trevor Lawrence gets injured. And even then, if he only plays 16 games or 15 games, you still have a shot at it. So I'm very confused by this number, by how low it is, by some of the names he's behind in his total. I think that this line is just wrong to me. And as long as he stays healthy, and that's the problem with taking season-long overs, I feel pretty confident in him hitting over this number.
All right, Curtis, we're going to hit you, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience here. So, Curtis, give me your present favorite, future, or player prop right now.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the NFC North. I think that there is some value for a couple of teams. I think that the Lions, although I think Ben Johnson is going to be the next great head coach in the league, I think they may be a little overvalued, and I think the Bears still have a ways to go in their full roster and their rebuild. So both the Packers and the Vikings have some value to win the NFC North. I'm going to take a contrarian pick here, and I'm going to pick the Vikings. I know they can't repeat their one-score performance from last year, but I also think that a lot of things went bad for them last year, and I think their offensive line is going to be a little bit better. They added another weapon in the passing game, and Justin Jefferson is an absolute monster out there. And we talk about their weakness being their secondary. Well, they did add Byron Murphy, and he's an underrated dude. He's a really good shutdown corner on some of the best receivers, even in Arizona when they were struggling on defense. He kept a lot of the main wide receivers to low yardages. And they have a couple of second-year guys coming off injury. I think there's a little bit of optimism for that cornerback group. You get a new defensive coordinator in there, and I think there is potential there. So I know if they're regression candidates, they're not going to win 13 games, but could they win 10 and win the division? I think it's a possibility. So I'll go there. And second being the Packers to win that division, because their odds are way off right now.
Yeah, like I said, there is a lot of uncertainty there in the NFC North, especially Aaron Rodgers, of course, no longer there. And not that he played well last season, but this is just a division and a conference where there's a lot of opportunities. And that's why taking some swings on some teams in the NFC, I think, holds a lot of value this upcoming season. So I'm really excited to share the research that I came up with on several of these teams in the NFC, because I think some of it might surprise you. Like I said, a different team, different division, different conference entirely. But I tried to write some things that are going to surprise you about every single team. Tennessee Titans, you're going to be surprised about some of the things you read there. Seattle Seahawks, you're going to be very surprised about some of the things that you read that I wrote about them in their chapter. I really tried to, as you guys know, with what Rich writes on our website and what Ray now writes and what Curtis writes and what all of our writers do, I've tried to just get them to take the mindset that I started the website with, years ago, which is I'm not going to write things that other people have already written on other websites and discussed a million times over. There's no value in doing that. Nobody wants to come and read that. You use different words to say the same exact things with the same exact opinions and the same approaches. We're going to write stories on every single major guy who got traded and just write the same type of thing. No, we are always going to be trying to attack things from a different perspective so that when you come and read what we have written, you're going to learn something new. You're going to think something differently than you did entering the day. And that's what we've tried to do with this book. I think you're going to learn something as you read this book and be very surprised with certain things that we write. And I think we're going to be more right than wrong with these projections and these opinions and these predictions. So really excited. Now you can get the book in your hands. It's up on the website at Sharp Football Analysis, early bird through through Friday. And you can be entered to get a printed book. If you purchase the PDF, we'll give away a couple of those. So quote tweet my pin tweet, and you can be entered to that. Let's go ahead and take a couple of questions here. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll try to knock a few of these out as we are celebrating our release of the book. Let's go to the first one here. Let's see. Let me bring you up here. Here we go. Jordan, you are up now. I'm adding you as a speaker. Unmute your mic and go ahead, fire away. What question do you have for us tonight?
Up here. I just wonder what you guys think about the Browns this year. I feel like they're kind of undervalued across the board, and especially Donovan Peoples-Jones. I've noticed his receiving yards prop is super low, and it just doesn't really make sense to me. I just want to say I appreciate all your guys' work. The Sharp Review is the only thing I pay for in the football industry because, like you said, it's the only thing that's different. So props there, guys. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for that, Jordan. Really appreciate those kind words. I hope everybody else listening takes that same advice as well. So we got some more Cleveland Browns talk here. I feel like, Rich, we might as well kick it over to you. I know Rich has already stated from earlier in the call that he is higher on the Browns as a team. He's also higher on Deshaun Watson. You can echo those opinions, Rich, quickly, and then also share what is your take on Donovan Peoples-Jones this season.
Yeah, I laid out the case for the Browns' entire roster kind of being maybe undervalued this season, even at 9.5 wins. I think this is a double-digit win team with all the additions that they've made, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a little tricky. I mean, the positive is, you look at last year. So he ran a route on 93% of the Browns' dropbacks. That was 11th among all receivers in the NFL. So he's out there every play. The only question is, with him being in a contract year, the additions the Browns have made with Elijah Moore, Marquise Goodwin, Cedric Tillman, is he someone that maybe they don't have as part of like their big picture plans? And does he get flagged down by one of those guys kind of during the season? Because while he was on the field a lot last season, his production on a per-play basis was still at the bottom of the league. He was only targeted on 16.9% of his routes. That was 81st among all wide receivers. He was 59th in yards per route run. So if the Browns kind of look at that production, maybe they want more out of that moving forward. Maybe we see a guy like Cedric Tillman, who we know is part of the future, earn more reps as the season comes on. That would be the only thing that would scare me as far as betting like an over on Donovan Peoples-Jones right now. As far as fantasy, though, like in these best ball drafts, like he's the type of guy to take a shot on, though, because if he is on the field for 90+% of the Cleveland snaps, we do believe Deshaun Watson plays better than he did the final 6 games of last season. You get those spike weeks and those spike week performances, which typically came on the road when Amari Cooper was doing his road Amari thing. But, yeah, I definitely still find the Browns undervalued as a whole.
All right, excellent. Let's go to Tony. We'll get a question from Tony next. Unmute yourself, Tony. Good afternoon. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you for having me, guys. Warren and the boys. I read the book for the first time last year, and not only did it make me money, but it made me sound smarter amongst my friends, and that's really all we're looking for in the end. But my question has to do with the new look New York Jets. And offensively, with Aaron Rodgers coming in his island of misfit toys from the Green Bay Packers, with Nathaniel Hackett coming in with his boneheaded offensive design, with the pieces that the Jets already had in tow in the offensive line, how did you guys go about projecting or predicting what this offense could look like? Is there anything you sort of hinged on, factored in on, that could predict what this offense could be?
Well, that's a great question, Tony. And again, thank you very much for your comments about the book. I'm glad it helped make you money last year. For me, and then I'll kick it over to Ray in terms of some of the thoughts to follow up. I obviously took into consideration with Aaron Rodgers coming here that Aaron Rodgers was playing some of last season injured and banged up. So that was certainly one aspect to whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to see some success here. But I'll let Ray take this, and then I'll piggyback on some of the things that I'm sure he's going to say. Ray, what do you think here?
Well, I think that if you look at Aaron Rodgers last year and you're trying to say, well, he was bad last year, and he certainly was not at the level that he was over his MVP seasons. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But I think if you look at his underlying numbers from last year, it actually wasn't as bad as maybe it appeared. His on-target throw percentage was actually higher than it was in 2021. If you look at PFF's adjusted completion rate, it was roughly the same as it was in 2021. Rodgers tied for the lead would be how we'd say this, with 40 drop passes last season, easily the highest number of his career. He didn't have Devontae Adams. He didn't have that number one alpha receiver. It didn't really seem like he wanted to be within Green Bay anymore. And so I kind of put all that together, and I'm expecting a bounce back here from Rodgers. He's getting Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is coming off an amazing rookie season, obviously winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. He looks like he is the real deal. They have some depth there at receiver. It is funny that the receiving core last year in Green Bay maybe wasn't the best, and then Aaron Rodgers wanted all of those receivers with him in New York, but I still like Corey Davis, and I think Corey Davis could have a say here. They've got decent tight ends. You're a little bit concerned about the offensive line. You're concerned about what Breece Hall is going to look like coming back from the injury. How soon can he get back to what we saw from him last year, which was outstanding. But ultimately, Aaron Rodgers is the key to this. And that team last year was good. The defense was good. They were competitive with three of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. If you go in any quarterback metric and you look at the bottom of the list, you're going to find three Jets down there. Mike White was a little bit better. Joe Flacco was a little bit better than Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson, unfortunately, each of the last 2 years has been at the bottom of most of those lists. And so Rodgers, if he's coming back, not even to his 2021 form, but if he's going to bounce back from last year, which I suspect, looking at some of the underlying numbers, that this offense is going to be a lot better moving forward. And if his offense is better and that defense can perform similarly to how they did last year, then you're looking at a team that can compete with the Dolphins and with the Bills.
And I definitely think that they can compete. Their defense is going up against the number one toughest schedule of opposing offenses this upcoming season. I don't think, though, we can understate how frustrating and difficult it must be to be a defender on an elite defensive unit when your offense is doing absolutely nothing for you and putting you in terrible situations, game in, game out, fourth quarter in, fourth quarter out. And by the end of the season, I mean, you got to just want to be out of there. Like, you've got to just want the season to end. It's got to be so frustrating. That's why so many of these defenses, I think, as we're handicapping games and teams and seasons, one of the things that we cannot overlook is the human element of players. And the fact that these people have emotions, they have strengths and weaknesses themselves. And when they're put in difficult situations, they will try to step up. But like at some point, it's just hard to continue to do that. And I think with a competent offense and a quarterback that you actually will believe in now, it's going to be very different for a lot of the players on this Jets defense. Now, the Jets defense a few years ago was actually not very good. We obviously saw the big turnaround last season with Robert Saleh coming in and producing really well for the defense. So I don't have a lot of faith in Nathaniel Hackett as a really great coordinator, but I will say this. There are a lot of coaches around the NFL who I firmly believe are so much better suited to just be coordinators than they are coaches. And it is a challenge and a difficult thing for a coordinator to get that job as a head coach and then to take on all that responsibility that is entailed with that role. And they lose a little bit at times with what their specialty was, which earned them the job in the first place, which is one of the reasons why I felt it was so valuable that, for example, Brian Daboll last season, when he went to take over the Giants head job, obviously he's known for his offensive play calling with the Buffalo Bills and how he turned that team around. But he was able to have a guy and hire a guy like Mike Kafka to come in and let Kafka call the offense. They were on the same page with what they wanted to do. They worked together on game plans and preparation ahead of time, but actually having somebody to lean on to call the plays is so valuable. And we know that Nathaniel Hackett, that team was terrible last season, but he should be a little bit better than he was last year now that he's just calling plays on the offensive side of the ball. That said, I am not one of the people that are on the Jets pre-flop. I am not betting the Jets to win the AFC East, to win a bunch of games, to do anything in the futures market. And the reason is because I don't see a lot of value in the Jets right now. The market is all over these guys. I mean, the NFL wants the Jets to do well. So if you did bet the Jets early, look, the one thing, and you've got line value at this point, you should be able to feel good that the NFL stuck the Jets on this great rest schedule. They don't leave New York, New Jersey area only, I think, 7 times this season are they out of there. But they have the best rest edge that they have ever had in their franchise's history. Aaron Rodgers didn't get anything like this the last several years when he was in Green Bay. The NFL clearly wants the Jets to be playing in New York in the playoffs at home. And just understanding that does go a long way to like your thought process of the Jets, but I just can't pull the trigger. I don't see enough value on them. I want to let the guys get back to work or relaxation. At some point soon, I'm going to be heading to the beach, and you're going to see a lot of videos coming out, and I'm just going to be relaxing and talking about the league and doing the things that I love doing, which is sharing information with you all. I've been bottled up and trying to plug away on my research to give you guys some actionable things to read about for the last several months, and I've been basically controlling all my thoughts and media takes and confining them to this book. I encourage you, go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, pick up a PDF today. It is on pre-sale. You will not find a better way to A, spend your money, or B, utilize your time in preparing for the upcoming season than to read what myself and Rich and Ray and Curtis and Joe and Tucker and Dan, we all wrote about in this book, and there's so much good, valuable information inside of here. If you bought it before, I know you're going to be buying it again, but if you haven't bought it before, like, I highly encourage you, give it a shot, roll the dice on it. You're not going to be disappointed. Again, early bird sale ends on Friday, but you have a shot at winning a printed book. I just went and looked. The tweet, my sticky tweet has only been quote tweeted I want to say 16 times by people not associated with us, and everybody who wrote for me, I'm going to be sending them a printed book, so that those don't count. Only about 16 times. We're giving away multiple copies. If you're not in there quote tweeting the pinned tweet at some point today to try to get a shot at winning a printed book, you're also making mistakes. So go in there and give that thing a quote tweet to give yourself a shot at winning a 532-page full-color printed book sent to you from Amazon. I know you're going to love it. So, guys, we're going to be with you tomorrow night talking more about the season, talking more about individual predictions for different divisions. We're going to go division by division through the NFL. Tomorrow night, you're going to find us live. I want to say it's at 8 p.m., but we'll tweet out some more information about that later. So tune in tomorrow night. Until then, the book is out. It launched at noon. Go get it up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Download your PDF. Start reviewing it. Start reading it. Start betting on futures. Hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We'll see you in those Twitter